Hello and welcome to the Famalam podcast. It's Famalam on tour. We're at Lizzie's parents' house, hence the slightly different decor. But we're here, Lizzie and Toby are here with our friends, Liz and Isaac Fell. We're thinking today about how families deal with serious illness. I'm really grateful to have you with us, Liz. Really grateful to have you with us, Isaac. Famalam is a podcast trying to help families think about how to build our family lives around Jesus and his teachings. Liz, Isaac, thank you for making time to be here.
Would you just give us a little intro about yourselves?
I'm Liz, I'm married to Simon, and we have Isaac and Noah. Noah's in year 13, so he's 17 at the moment. And I've worked for the last 23 years as a criminal barrister. And Simon, my husband's a year 5 teacher. So that's us.
I'm Isaac, and I'm very much single, as Toby knows. I'm at university at St Mary's, Twickenham. I'm doing a sports science degree, and I'm also training to be a professional athlete. So yeah.
Yeah. And what's your sport?
Yeah, running. So like anything between 1,500 and a half marathon at the moment. And then obviously I think later on in life I will get up to the marathon distance, but we'll see.
Yeah. Amazing.
Wow.
You guys are incredible athletes, your whole family. So,
And we're going to be talking about the season of your life that was particularly difficult for you when Isaac was ill. But before that, could you share a little bit about what your family looked like for you all?
Very sporty family, always been really sporty. In fact, Simon was a footballer growing up, and then he met my dad and became a runner. So then when the boys came along, they became runners and footballers. And yeah, every day we had different sports that we were ferrying the boys to. I worked part-time, Simon worked full-time at schools. We both busy volunteering at church. Simon's a worship leader. I'm on the preaching rota and do various different governance roles. So yeah, life was pretty busy.
Isaac, what was it like for you?
Yeah. So for me, whatever time we weren't at school, we were outside playing sports. As Mum said, very sporty family. And me and my little brother Noah got on very well. We're really close. So we literally did anything that involved a ball or involved sport, just constant exercise, to be fair. And we did everything together.
Nice.
So I think we were pretty normal kids.
So Liz, tell us about the moment that you realised something was Isaac's gone. All right. Maybe Isaac will join us back in a second. But until then, Liz, tell us what happened as you began to realise that something was not quite right and when you realised that something was seriously wrong.
Yeah, well, it was back when Isaac was 9 and he'd been training at the athletics track and he'd been complaining that his back was sore. So we just thought he'd pulled a muscle. But as weeks went by, that didn't go away. So we took him to the doctors to get it checked out. And they really just assumed it was the same pulled muscle. There were a couple of tests that showed some markers, but they thought they were just kind of rogue tests. They weren't really showing anything particular. They referred us to a paediatrician at the hospital, but assumed the pain would go before that. So we'd be able to cancel the appointment. If it was still there, then to go. And it actually was still there. This is back then, just coming into 2016. And yeah, the pain was still there. And I still remember him competing in a cross-country race. He played football for his local team and he was still doing stuff, but he was just constantly moaning about this sore back, which was really unusual for him because he just he would not let anything stop him doing sport. But then there was a week where he spiked a fever and I took him to the doctor and they sent us straight to A&E. So at that stage, we didn't know it was connected. He then started complaining about shoulder pain and the back pain was still there. So then that basically started about a week in hospital of them trying to get to the bottom of what was wrong, doing loads of different tests and knowing there was something wrong with him, but not really knowing what. So yeah, eventually they decided after about a week of that they were just going to do an MRI of his whole back because they just couldn't get to the bottom of what was wrong. So the MRI that should have taken about 40 minutes took about 2 hours because what they'd discovered was that all of his bone marrow in his whole body was actually affected. They could tell there was something wrong with it. But they obviously then needed to do bone marrow biopsies to find out what. And they'd also discovered that by this point, even though it hadn't shown in earlier x-rays and things, the vertebrae in his lower spine had all collapsed as well, which explained why he couldn't walk anymore, was in a wheelchair and that kind of thing. So that got us to the Friday at the end of January and they sent us home. for a weekend of waiting, really. We met our first oncologist that Friday night, and she had said that we needed to go to a bigger hospital where they could do further tests, and we'd get a call from them. So that was Addenbrooke's. So then we had to wait, and then went to Addenbrooke's that following Tuesday and were there all day while they did a bone marrow biopsy. We waited for results and everything. And the results weren't back by the end of the day. So they actually admitted us to the ward to wait for the results. It was then that Dr. Amos took me and Simon off into a side room with a few of the other doctors and nurses to tell us that Isaac had actually got acute lymphoblastic leukemia. So the bone marrow was actually, the leukemia cells had completely changed his entire bone marrow. But actually, unusually, they weren't showing clearly in the blood. They'd completely manifested in the bone marrow and was only just kind of coming through in his blood. So so that was the 2nd of February 2016 when Isaac was 9.
Everyone's worst nightmare. Unbelievable. Wow.
Isaac, what do you actually remember being told? Obviously, you're 9 years old, so I mean, it's quite a long time ago now. Do you remember much of what the diagnosis was?
No. I don't think I even remember, like, I kind of vaguely remember at the time not really understanding what it was and kind of how much it was actually going to affect me in the long run, maybe. It was more of just, okay, finally, they've actually found what's wrong with me, and they told me there was a cure enough, so kind of that I was eventually going to be okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Jeez.
Gosh, but Liz, obviously, from what we heard from Isaac, he remembers very little because he was obviously in so much pain. But as a parent, when you heard that news from the doctor, can you just share a little bit about how you and Simon kind of processed that and then decided how to communicate that to Isaac? And then obviously how you had to communicate that to Noah and then the rest of the family and everyone else. I mean, obviously you're dealing with your emotions. I can't imagine as a parent, you're processing yourself, but then you've got to try and communicate it to your son and then his brother, then your parents, everyone else. How did it look and how did you parent in that?
So I think it actually was far better having the diagnosis, because up to that point, Isaac had been getting worse and worse. He was in a wheelchair. He was just in so much pain. This boy who was always full of joy was just miserable and in agony. Nothing was being done to make him better because they didn't know what was wrong with him, so they couldn't treat him. So he was just getting worse and worse and deteriorating before our eyes. So when we then got the diagnosis, and they gave us his treatment plan, they were able to say exactly what it was and what it would look like. And so we suddenly had answers and a plan. So as much as it was a really horrific and serious diagnosis, actually, at least we then knew they could now treat it. So we could start the treatment and we knew what that would look like. And yet it would be awful. It would be a very long time. And we did kind of mourn the things that Isaac would miss, because at that stage, we knew it would be over 3 years, probably 3.5 years of treatment. And then we didn't know long-term effects post that. So we knew that on that first day when we got the diagnosis, that's roughly how long it would be. So I think it was a real sadness, but suddenly we felt like we had some control back in terms of understanding what treatment would look like and how we would get better. Whereas before that, it was just a lot of uncertainty. So we relied on the really amazing doctors and staff at the hospital at Addenbrooke's, because it's the paediatric oncology department. They deal with this day in, day out. So they know how to communicate the news to parents, to children, and really support you through that. So we just relied on them to help us and walk us through it. And you just did it like you just do. So, and I remember, because me and Simon had both gone down there, I was staying over at the hospital and he was going home. And at that time, Noah was staying over at my parents'. So it meant that Simon could go over first thing in the morning and then communicate the news to Noah. So because we'd already had this like week and a half where we knew there was something seriously wrong with him, but didn't know what, everyone was already praying. So like everyone that weekend at church, between the services, there was prayer going on, and Simon had been leading worship on that Sunday as well. So he'd carried on and led worship. So they'd been praying over him. People had come to the house to pray over Isaac. So people already knew that there was something serious going on. So then it was just communicating what it was that was wrong. So yeah. And then amazingly, a friend of ours said, look, you are trying to keep so many people in the loop with updates. And now you know what it is and the length of the treatment plan. Would you like me to set up a private group on Facebook where you can just upload everything like prayer requests, what's going on next, and just keep us all informed all the time? So he actually did that and we kept that. So that's kind of a record. It's like a journal of our journey through, of like answers to prayer, of daily treatment, photos, like literally everything is all within that group. So yeah.
Wow. And tell us a bit more then, Liz, about how it impacted faith, because you talk about praying, you talk about the church being supportive. What about you and Simon? Like, how did it affect your personal faith? Did it were you questioning, like, what was going on for you
No,
in the midst of all of that crisis?
for us, I think, yeah, everything suddenly in this world becomes uncertain. And the one thing we were sure of was God and his love for us and how he was there for us. So we just threw ourselves on him, which is why when Isaac had been really unwell and we knew we were waiting for this appointment to find out what was wrong, and the church actually contacted and said, does someone want to cover Simon doing worship? And he was like, no, like that is like the place I need to be. We need to keep, because that we just needed to press in. So he carried on. He went that morning and led worship. Isaac was too ill to go. So then I went to the evening service, and I just remember friends either side of me just sobbed my way through the service. But it was just, that was the one thing we were sure of. And it's interesting because in throwing ourselves on God, saying, look, actually, you're the only thing we can be sure of, it was amazing how he just kept speaking to us. So even like, I remember Monday morning really early, Simon got up and we went to the hospital Tuesday. He was diagnosed on the Tuesday, so the day before. And he's just reading in the message version, like Proverbs 3 verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart. But he read on, and in the message version, it says, run to God, obviously, we're all runners. So we're like, yeah, you see us, you see us. And then it says your very bones will vibrate with life. And at this point we'd been told about the bone marrow being abnormal. And then there were like just words coming in left, right, and centre from people who didn't know detail that were just bang on. And it was just God constantly saying to us that I see you, I see exactly the situation you're in. So the thing I think I found most difficult was people in that space over that time, people in our space for that week and then the weeks following diagnosis, assuming that we'd had crises of faith and questioning God on our behalf.
Wow.
And that really made me cross, because I'm like, how dare you? That's the one thing we've got to cling on to. And you're trying to like undermine that. It just made me really cross.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
fascinating.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Well, hopefully Isaac will join. Oh, Isaac appears to join back just as we're about to ask.
Isaac, do you remember what a normal week in a life was during your treatment?
Yeah, so I think treatment was cut up into like different phases. Now, I genuinely can't remember how many phases there were, but I just know that there was kind of a block at the beginning of about 6 months, 5 phases. There was a block of about 6 months at the start of treatment that were pretty heavy and intense, and that's kind of where my hair went. I was in and out of hospital a lot. I don't really remember much of that block, to be honest. I don't remember any of the hospital visits. There was a lot of good times in there. We worked with different charities and I got different things from different charities. That's kind of like the only things I really remember of that time. But then for the kind of the last 3 years of the treatment, 3.5 years, I say it was a bit easier. Obviously it's still cancer treatment, so it's never easy, but it was like a lot easier and a lot more settled than first 6 months. So it's kind of like I think I was visiting a hospital every couple of weeks, and then like it was literally just whenever I wasn't in hospital, I was at school, just basically living a normal life. And I think that's one of the things that really stood out for me in like the hospital to all the doctors and nurses and stuff, was that I was one of the few children that was like in school like pretty much the whole time. For someone for someone on the outside that didn't know me, I think I would have come across as a pretty, other than the fact that I struggled with sports and like energy wise I was tired, I came across as a pretty normal kid at the time, which is really incredible to say, but that's kind of how I felt anyway. And yeah, then obviously there were periods in that 3 years that
Do you
I did
think
get
you'd
admitted
say
to
that
hospital.
helped you like emotionally as well?
Yeah, it probably did. Yeah, I think it was a real easy way to go through it was just if I kind of thought I was normal, I'd live normally. That was the thing. When you first get diagnosed, it feels like really weird. Oh no, we're going to have 3.5 years of treatment. It's going to be hard. But then like as you get through it, when you're a year in, you've got 2 years left. When you're 2 years in, you just feel normal. That's just the way it is. That's just life. And it's kind of, there's no choice in it. You've just got to live it. So it just becomes normal life.
Flipping out.
Wow. I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
don't know if
extraordinary.
it's helpful to say, actually, right at the outset, you get given a specialist nurse when you're going through paediatric oncology treatment. And our specialist nurse was actually a Christian. And she said to us on that
Oh,
first couple of days that 3.5 years in the life of a 9-year-old, and then actually in anyone's life, is a really long time. So try to carry
Yeah.
on living life. You can't put life on hold for that length of time. You've got to kind of crack on.
Right.
And so they basically said, if you're not in hospital because you're ill, you should really be at school. That's the expectation. So there will be times you get tired and you are going to have far less energy than anyone else. But actually, you can't miss 3.5 years. We don't really want you to miss 3.5 years of school. So just keep going. She also said, and this might link in with Isaac's memories, you're going to get lots of crazy opportunities because you've actually been diagnosed with a life-threatening condition. Grab them all, because every opportunity you take will create a memory that will far outweigh all the days and mundane trips to the hospital. So we took that so literally. I cannot tell you how literally we took that. Every time we were at the hospital and there was a poster advertising something, we were like, right, let's message that. So we did. We just, every opportunity thrown at us. And that came with its frustrations because Isaac had to have his temperature taken every day. And if he hit 38 degrees, we had to go to hospital. So every time you made plans, there was a likelihood they might have to change. And as he said, that first 6 months was really intense. And we were at the hospital a lot and he really couldn't do very much. Then it kind of got into this nice routine for the rest of the 3 years, but he was still on chemo tablets at home every day. He still had to have his bloods taken every week. And there's always those risks of infection because he's immunosuppressed for that whole 3.5 years. So as much as we took those things really literally and we did kind of properly embrace life, take all the opportunities, it also came with frustrations because you'd make these amazing plans and it would be so great and then you'd end up in hospital. So yeah.
Wow. And just hearing you, it just sounds like there were so many challenges. And parenting is challenging enough, but to have this to parent through, and it sounds like you had some really wise people along the way. But what would you say for you and Simon was the most challenging parenting Isaac through that illness, but also Noah? What would you say was the most challenging?
I think for Noah and for us with Noah, the biggest challenge was he likes routine, and he was only 7 when Isaac was diagnosed. And so Isaac's treatment being 3.5 years, that was Noah 7 to 11, basically. And he likes to know what's happening. He likes the plan and he likes routine. And then suddenly he'd come out of school and it's not me picking him up, it's somebody else, because I'd had to take Isaac to the hospital last minute because something had happened or something like that. So I think that was really hard with Noah. With Isaac, it was really weird because I got to spend so much time with him. Like we were literally together all the time. It made us incredibly close. And actually, at the time he was diagnosed, he was in year 5 and his year 5 teacher was Simon. So whenever I was sending him to school, I was sending him to Simon. So it was amazing that I felt like that's why he could be in school as much, because I think it just gave us such confidence that Simon was there and he was with him. So I think it was, you just kind of get on with it. I think we just kind of got on with it. I think the hardest conversation I had with Isaac wasn't actually about him, it was about somebody else. And that's through actually prior to his treatment, friends in our church. Philippa has actually been a really good friend of ours for ages. And she was Isaac's key worker at nursery and everything. And then she had had her own family and her 3rd child had been born when Isaac was in his intensive phase of treatment. So Philippa had been praying for Isaac and all the rest of it. And then her 3rd child, Lucy, was born and 6 weeks later was diagnosed with a brain tumour and hydrocephalus. But they were suddenly thrown into our world under the same consultants. Lucy was having some of the same chemos as Isaac. And so as a church, then there was prayer for Isaac and Lucy. We used to see them quite a lot at the hospital. Isaac had a really special bond with Lucy because she was this tiny little baby that was going through the same thing as him. Well, different, but cancer treatment like him. And there was one occasion that Isaac had got to that 5th phase of treatment that was more stable, and Lucy had been admitted because they were really struggling to treat her. So after Isaac had finished his treatment, we'd gone up to the ward where Lucy was. We'd spent time. Isaac had even had a picture with Lucy and was like messing about with her. She was like half asleep, but it was just like really precious. But that evening, Philippa came to see me to tell me that they'd got the test results back and there was nothing they could now do for Lucy. And they basically, I get emotional telling this story, but basically they gave her 48 hours. So then I had to communicate with Isaac, who was then 10, that little Lucy wasn't going to make it like he was going to make it. But Lucy is currently in year 5 at school. She's a complete miracle. God healed her.
Oh, wow.
She has had no treatment since that day they stopped treatment, and she is miraculously
Wow.
cured. So she is amazing.
Wow.
Isn't she, Isaac?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
That's
So
insane.
that's an
Yeah.
absolute miracle.
Complete
Yeah.
miracle.
Wow, it's gotta-
Everybody in the hospital knows her as a miracle child. There is no explanation for
Wow.
her recovery. Yeah. But
That's
that
an amazing
conversation was the hardest conversation I've ever had to have, because you don't expect to have that conversation with a 10-year-old, particularly when they're going through the same treatment. I tell her story so much, and she does loads of stuff with charities as well. Like her, they share her story a lot. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. It's just, beautiful.
Liz, what an amazing story. How do you parent when you can't fix the situation? What does that look like?
For us, the only place, like I said before, that we had certainty was God. So all we could do was point Isaac to God because he had the same uncertainty. So worship music was like literally everything. We anointed him with oil. We just looked at the Bible together and saw what Jesus did, and we just tried to do that and help Isaac do that. So, and it clearly did lead him to Jesus, even though he already had a relationship himself, because he had to have a Hickman line fitted in his chest, like a central line where they could administer lots of the drugs. So that was fitted. And then for the first 4 phases of his treatment, and they usually would leave that in the whole 3.5 years. But they said if he didn't want it for the last long phase of treatment, they could do cannulas every time he needed it. So that would be like literally once a week, once every 2 weeks. But he decided he wanted cannulas because the problem with the Hickman line was he couldn't shower. He had to bath. He couldn't get it wet. There were all kind of things with it. So he couldn't swim. He couldn't do any of that. But one of his big incentives was he wanted to get baptized. So when he had his Hickman line out and just started phase 5 of treatment, he then got baptized.
That's cool. Isaac, why don't you tell us a bit about your perspective on that story?
Yeah, I think, for me, it was, again, similar to what Mum said, kind of the only place to look for hope was Jesus. And I always tell this, because I tell my story a lot, but I always tell this, neither of my parents are pastors, but I genuinely felt like I was brought up a pastor's kid, kind of because everyone was so involved in church and stuff. Everyone knew who I was.
Yeah.
I felt like it just felt so welcoming, and the church was just incredible. My grandparents were there as well. It was like a home, and it wasn't like every week I had to go. It was like every week I wanted to go, and I wanted to see what it was about. I wanted to learn more. I loved helping out with like the kids, the workers, the youth leaders, kind of I'd love like helping lead with them and stuff, and like helping other people explore Jesus. And I have no idea where it came from, but it kind of just happened. And I don't know, I think it is probably something to do with the parenting I had, the grandparents. My granddad, my dad's dad, was a pastor. So I think it's just from their upbringing, that was just the way of life, kind of like treatment. There was no choice. Not that obviously picking Jesus is a choice, but for me, it didn't feel like a choice. It felt more like that's what I was always going to do.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for
Wow.
sharing. Gosh, it's extraordinary. Liz, I imagine as a parent, you felt all sorts of emotions and it was a bit of a roller coaster ride. How did you make sure that you didn't project your feelings? I don't want to say what feelings there were, but if you can share a little bit what those feelings were and how you made sure that you weren't projecting them onto Isaac or Noah and how you parented through that, really.
I think we've always been in situations like work and life, we've always had quite a good balance. We don't like work ourselves into the ground. We've always had a really healthy balance and outlets for stress and situations. So running was our big go-to. So we ran before Isaac was diagnosed. We like for our own well-being and for exercise competitively, all of that. So it was like the obvious thing to keep doing because that keeps you sane. I think. And so running was a big go-to. I always feel better after a run. So that stops projection quite a lot in normal life for anybody, not just in treatment. That helps a lot. I think it will be different for everybody. But for us, when Isaac was given the diagnosis, they said to us, you need to understand this isn't a life sentence for Isaac. This is treatable. It's very treatable. If we'd been giving you this diagnosis 20 years ago, it would be a different situation. But Isaac will live. So we'd been given that reassurance and the fact we had a really clear plan. Yes, there were going to be hiccups. And I think the hiccups were the thing that frustrated me because I was thinking, right, we can nail this. We threw ourselves into so much stuff and making so many plans. When they then got interrupted, it's like, how dare you get in the way? And I think the other thing was the morning of, well, what will he miss? So the fact that I say he was in a wheelchair to start with and he couldn't walk, then he was back walking again, but the treatment really impacted his ankles and his legs. And so he ended up suffering really severely with drop foot, which meant that he'd trip over his feet all the time. He spent months sleeping in splints trying to get his ankles back to 90 degrees. And for years, his legs just weren't right. He had to have his feet operated on, like way after treatment finished. And even now, we see some of the side effects still from the drugs. They tend to be from the drugs, not the illness itself. It's the frustrations of the side effects of all those drugs and what impact they may have, but still knowing underneath that God's promises are that Isaac will reach his full potential and that kind of thing. So I just think it's the length of time it takes sometimes to see some more of that.
Wow. And obviously, well, it was such a tricky time for you, Isaac. But was there any struggles, any thoughts that you had throughout the time that you felt less like you could speak to people about? And how did you deal with that? And what did your parents do that helped with that, I guess?
Yeah, I think for me, obviously it was a hard time, but I look back and it was a growth opportunity, and it's crazy to think that. I think it was just the community, and we always talk about it, family, friends, church, everything. Everyone around me made it about me and made me the most comfortable I could be. So I felt like for me, I was the one having the treatment, but it was probably the easiest thing for me. All I had to do was take the medication, all of the emotion behind it and everything. I didn't really think about it. That was kind of other people's problems. That sounds so bad, but that's what I feel like people built around me, and that's why I look back on it and that's why it felt kind of easy. Obviously, there were hard times, like getting admitted to hospital. I think Mum knows I hated staying in hospital. It was absolutely horrible. So yeah, the times when I was in
You just got
hospital, I
so
just got so
bored.
bored. Yeah, just so bored. It was those times I think I was very frustrated, and I told Mum, I'm pretty sure I told Mum everything, but I was just crazy frustrated that I couldn't do what other people could do. Constantly, Mum and Dad were trying to not necessarily hold me back, that sounds bad, but keep me so I was able to stay healthy and I didn't kind of go down a rabbit hole of doing too much and then making myself really ill during treatment. So I think they were probably the biggest frustrations, and seeing other people do
That's
things.
a really good point. Isaac will do things to the absolute edge. And so that was what we had to do, because he would do everything, but then crash and burn. He just had nothing left, and actually then ended up admitted to hospital because he was just so burnt out. So that was really hard, holding him back when at the same time we're going, yeah, let's live life. It's like, that's hard. But I tell you the other thing, actually, I'd forgotten about this. But at one stage I was like, well, how do I know if he genuinely is okay or if he's just telling me is okay? So I had a word with the nurse and she said, oh, we could get the psychologist or psychiatrist or whoever to come and see him. So, but they do it so he doesn't know who's speaking to him. And it's like, it's just some nurse. So I was properly nervous, thinking, I've gone behind his back, having like done this all together. And I've like effectively coordinated this like secret appointment. Anyway, she came out having
He's like
spoken
gone
to
wild.
Isaac. I know. She came out and she said to me, you've seriously got nothing to worry about. It's fine. So I was like, oh, okay. Did you ever know that happened, Isaac?
No, no,
Did you not?
no.
No way. That's crazy.
That's funny.
Subterfuge.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. What about, you've talked about how helpful like church, family, friends were. Were there some things that people did that were unhelpful? Like how
Can
did
I go
that
first?
fit out
Go
people?
for
But
it.
go on, Isaac.
So for me, it was in hospitals. There was these like play doctors, and like they'd come round and they were just really annoying. And I'm really like I'm scared of dogs. I'll say it. I am a bit scared of dogs, and they'd always have like these like dogs that would come round as like, I don't know what they'd call them, but they're like to make the kids feel happy.
Therapy
And I
dogs.
was obviously absolutely
Therapy dogs.
terrified.
Yeah.
Therapy dogs.
So yeah,
Yes.
so I was obviously absolutely terrified of them as well. So it's kind of those couple of things that were very unhelpful to me.
They really were. The fun doctors, they were called, and they literally were clowns. And neither of us are impressed with clowns. I used to have to stand at the door of his room in the hospital to stop them coming in. It was just awful. He's like, get on the door. I heard the fun doctors are around. Don't let any animals in my room. It was like, so honestly, it was like such a challenge, because they're the things that most kids really want. And he's like, don't let those things anywhere near me. I really don't want them. And they'd come in with banjos, and it's just like all too much. The thing for me, I think, more people instantly going to their own experience of cancer to kind of talk. And I felt like a lot of people offloaded on us. And actually, it was well with our soul during that time. We knew we were loved. We knew God was for us. We knew his kindness. So we could cope with that to a point. But it is really unhelpful when you're dealing with a diagnosis of a child having got cancer, and everybody coming round to your door to wish you well, telling you about their great aunt when they had cancer and their granddad when he got cancer and died. I mean, it's just not helpful. So that's like things not to do. It's like we just needed. So the biggest support we had was, as I say, that Facebook group, was because we kind of formed a team. We actually did form a team because we then used our running going forward. So we became #TeamFell, and we wore our t-shirts for events, and people became part of our team and they were for us. And our cheerleaders were the most helpful people. Whereas the people who wanted to kind of like show that they had gone through a similar thing were the most unhelpful people, because no matter what you go through, even if it is similar, you will have a really different experience. Like I couldn't say that to somebody now, because our experience will be really different to theirs. Like the people we've met through the journey who have gone through similar, our stories are completely different. They just are. So I found that really unhelpful.
So interesting.
Isaac, when did your treatment actually, like, when did it finish?
So yeah, it was May. Well, I can't. 24th of Mum's nodding. 24th of May, 2019. 2019.
No, 23rd.
23rd of May. 23rd of May.
Come on, bite off.
And how long?
The date. Come on, who's right? It's the barrister giving the proper details.
Yeah.
And did it feel like sort of a switch, Isaac, or how long did it feel like it took for life to get back to normal?
I think for me, the last year of treatment, I was really quite healthy, and I somehow had energy. I was on like the very maximum you could have because my bloods was so high. So I think I was on like 150% chemotherapy. That was also the other competition I kept up, was seeing if I could stay on the max dosage. But I think for me, because of like how good I was in the last year of treatment, for me the change was I just stopped taking tablets every night. That's the only thing I really noticed for until I don't know. I genuinely have no idea. I think it really like it smoothly just transitioned that like each day would probably be able to be slightly better, but it'd be so minuscule that I wouldn't notice it to eventually. It'd been 2 years since I finished treatment. So I think that was kind of the way it went. I took my last chemotherapy tablets in Monaco because I got a wish granted from a charity called Starlight, which is like a once in a lifetime wish for someone that has had a severe childhood illness. And so I asked to go to an F1 race, and so I was able to go to the Monaco Grand Prix, which was incredible. Which is actually where I got this hat, funnily enough. But I think for me that was kind of the significant, okay, that stopping point was Monaco Grand Prix. That's when my treatment finished. But in terms of me actually feeling better, I feel like it just naturally, it just it just happened, really.
Wow. And Liz, for you, journeying this, how do you think it changed you in parenting?
So hard because it's over such a long period of time. Like when you talk about life going back to normal, like what is normal after 3.5 years? Because that is normal. And so I don't know if I'm a different parent or not, because I can't really tell, because over the time it's the same with anything, isn't it? Any situation you face as you go along in anything, you kind of adapt to it and adjust to it. And that kind of becomes, I think, for me, like me correcting Isaac on his end of treatment date, for me, I've always been one for significance of dates and celebrating things. So I will always remember his end of treatment date. And like Monaco, the Grand Prix, what a crazy wish to get granted. Like we had no idea they were going to send him to Monaco. But for us, well, that's felt such a special end of treatment. Well, what is our passion? Our passion is running. There's a Diamond League athletics event in Monaco every year. So that's a way we can keep up a memory of celebrating God's goodness through the whole of treatment. Let's go to Monaco every year and kind of have it as a bit of a celebration. That's unfortunately now doubled to twice a year because we've discovered there's a 5K there. So let's go for the 5K as well. But so I think
Why not?
that's not the only thing.
Make as most of it as you can.
Exactly. So I think for us, it's like the significance of, but I think I was like that before. So for instance, like the Great North Run, that's a massive part of our family life. My dad's done that since I was a little girl. I've stood on the streets of Newcastle South Shields forever. And so the kids have grown up there and we've all been there all this time. So like when Isaac was first diagnosed and that first year, he was too ill to run the junior race. So we just got in touch with him and said, look, he had a place. He's too ill to run. I know you don't carry over kids' places, but would you? Because this is the circumstances. We don't even know if we're going to make it. It depends if he's ill or not. You have to link with a local hospital if you went away. We couldn't leave the country, that kind of thing through the whole of treatment. And they were like, well, why doesn't he just start the race then? So then he was like one of the official starters of all the junior races. So I think we just made, like, to be honest, we're called to be like Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He turns everything into good, doesn't he? He just sees it and goes, right, I'm just going to make it good. So we were like, well, that's what we're called to be. So we just literally, whatever happens, we're just going to make it good. So how do we make the Great North Run good for Isaac that year? Well, we'll see what they can do. And he can start it. He ended up on the BBC doing an interview, like crazy things like that. And so I think in parenting, although we might have been a bit like that before, we've kind of gone probably more to the extreme. So if we're going to do something, let's do it as well as we possibly can. Let's like go to the max. And that's maybe like a bit crazy at times and people probably think we're mad, but hey, that's probably one of the things we've taken
I love
from it.
that.
Good. And you may feel like you've already answered this, but are there things that matter to you now that didn't matter to you before? Like as you say, it was a long-term treatment, but are you able to reflect on things that are probably more important to you now than they were before?
It wasn't like, oh, I was working all the hours, so I never saw the kids. And suddenly now I realize the importance of family. It was never really like that. Family was always really important. I think it's harder having those healthy boundaries around things like work when kids start going to university, because actually when you've got family, you've got, like, for me, like, well, they're the most important thing and they're here. So I'm going to stop my working day because then I'm going to go and spend time with the kids. As that goes, actually, it's being disciplined in going, right, well, I am still going to stop my working day right now and keep my work life balance, even though I don't have a school run to go and do, or I don't have. So I actually think this stage of parenting, as we start, I mean, Ola will be going to university in September, so we'll be empty nesters then, I think is actually more challenging than adjusting and, post treatment.
Yeah, Liz, we've got no idea what you're talking about there.
No.
No. Never faced that at all in the last 6 months since Toby's gone to uni.
I mean, obviously, there's lots of things you've learned along the way, but if you were to share like one thing, what wisdom would you give to a family who was, and like you said, every situation is different, every story is different, but what wisdom would you give to a family who was maybe journeying something a bit similar to this?
I think for me, it would be it sounds simple on the surface, but I think just find joy and find peace in everything you do, and like realize how precious it is. Like I think that's one of the things that I thought about, I thought about like kind of more recently about my treatment, was that it could have been any type of cancer. Like you never know which one it could have been. I could have been like I don't think about luck really, but I'm just going to use it because it's easier to say. But I think it was lucky that it was a cancer that was so treatable, because if it wasn't, I obviously wouldn't be here. So like to find joy and peace in those times of hardship and the tough times, and just be so grateful for what you do have at the moment, and just look at that in every scenario. I think that's what I'd probably say.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think you have to be really kind with yourself, because no matter what, as I say, every story is different. Those first few weeks, months, however long it is, there is a period where actually, in the same way that when you suffer any traumatic experience, you will react like unconsciously to that. Like the way you react, you can't control. It's just going to be based on your circumstances, that your wiring, just like literally everything, you will respond in a way that you can't control. And actually be kind with yourself, because you can't control that. And that is a trauma response. So don't worry about that and get through that, but throw yourself on God is what I'd say. But then you kind of come through that and you do have a choice as to how you respond. And as Isaac said, I think if you surround yourself with the right people, like our parents were all just so supportive, that we were able to just kind of respond. We didn't feel like we were making a choice to respond in a certain way, but looking back, we were clearly making the choice to go, right, we're going to keep living. We're not going to put life on hold. We're not going to be bitter, because what is there to be bitter about? Actually, we're going to be grateful. And I think there does come a point, there is a choice, even if you don't know you're making it. But help is actually really good. Like you don't have to do it on your own. Support is there. Finding your people and your cheerleaders, I'd say, is really important, and trusting that they'll be there for you and have your back.
So good.
It's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, Isaac, thank you so much for sharing with us the journey that you went through, and Liz, same for you. It sounds, Liz, you and Simon did an amazing job parenting through a really, really tough season. Because we know you as a family, we know it's not just here on 45-minute or so podcast, but it's we know that's your family life too. So thank you so much for your time. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. I hope this has been helpful for you. Of course, as always, we'd love for you to share and like and comment, subscribe, all that kind of stuff. Get in touch with us, hello@familylandpod.com or @familylandpod on Instagram. But for now, we're so grateful. Thanks for your time and God bless you. See you again soon. Bye.
Bye.